Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Heaven Official's Blessing. Hey, Jeff, Phil, Lobsel, Daniel, Pablo, thanks for joining us. I just realized, oh no, are there problems? No. Can y'all not hear me? Oh no! Okay, so for those who don't know, I've been, okay, is it good now? I've been updating and fixing my stream setup. We had some issues on Saturday, and so I said, enough's enough. I'm gonna have to look at all this. Replaced a couple things, fixed things, got a new monitor. The microphone may be next because we have had issues with it going staticky in the past, and I'm really worried about it doing that again. And it's also just not, it's not the best microphone, so good thing it's working right now. So for now, we're gonna go ahead and keep going. I do see, now that I've edited everything, do we have any music playing? Let's, proofready, humble, what? No, that is not the music we desire. No. Well, we're gonna listen to that. There we go. So now we have a little music. Okay, so there's some underlying static. I think this mic is dying, because we've had the static problem in the past. It's come and gone, and I think the mic is just not the best one I could have. But, I'm still kind of fixing everything, changing things. My mom insists that I need a new desk. She thinks mine is too small, so we are looking at that as well. So this week may be a little topsy-turvy as we experiment with some things, change some things. There's a new background. I'm in a different area with the stream setup. Got new lighting. I think it's going to be good in the long run, but it might mean that this week is a little messy. This will be the only stream I do today because I am dead tired. On top of all the setup changes, I've also been working on house things. We moved into this house about 7-8 months ago, and our garage is just full of crap that needs to be gotten rid of, and we just haven't done it because other stuff's been going on. So while I did 2 for 1. I went out and bought things I needed for the stream setup and got rid of things in the garage. So without further ado, we are reading Heaven Official's Blessing this week. No, don't play that. I'm trying to pull up this. Oh, and Bob is at the door, and Bob wants in, so I will go let Bob in, and then I will go back to the book. Hand off, you can't leave. Come on, Bob. Come in. Bob, come, don't run away from me, Bob. Alright, I'll be right back. What do you want, Bob? Bob's been in a bad mood all morning because I was gone for half the morning, and he didn't like it when I leave the house. He's very upset. So, we are reading Heaven Official's Blessing, the story of a god of bad luck, and his navigating his way back into the world of heavenly politics. This chapter, chapter 33, we dropped off with our previous episode was the end of a mystery. We closed off the mystery of the Desert Kingdom and everything that was going on there. And so now, Shilian, I think Shilian is back in heaven. He was summoned for this big meeting. He thought it was about the whole mystery that just happened, but then turns out it looks like everybody's waiting for him, and he's not sure what that means. He's a little nervous. So, chapter 33. In the Great Martial Hall, Crown Prince meets Crown Prince 3. Hello, Julie, and everybody else joining us. Thanks for hopping in. Let me move this a little bit more. I just realized my fancy new monitor is not on. I forgot to turn on my new monitor, so I'm not using it right now, I guess. Next time it'll be nice to have the book on one screen and the setup on the other. Ling Wen approached the throne, dressed all in black and without a word or smile. She drew a line through an item on her memo. My lord, there are a few heavenly officials still on patrol in the mortal realm, unable to return. Jun Wu nodded. They have already reported in. Ling Wen acknowledged the response, and Jun Wu turned to Shi Lian. Jianli, I am sure you're curious as to why you've been summoned here today. Shi Lian still had his head bowed. I can guess. However, I'd assumed the matter with General Pei Jr. was already settled. Just then, a man's voice rang out. Whether it's been settled is yet hard to say. The voice that came from behind was lyrical. When Shi Lian turned his head to look, a martial god stepped into the great hall. His hand resting on the hilt of his sword, he walked towards the front. When he passed by Shi Lian, he stopped in his steps, and the corners of his lips lifted. Your Royal Highness, I've heard much about you. This martial god looked to be about 26 to 27 years old, graceful and confident in his actions. Looking at his face, Shi Lian thought he looked even more handsome than the statue he saw at Mount Yujun. It was the kind of handsome that could definitely steal hearts. Very much the charming type. Shi Lian didn't respond. He continued, Our little Pei has been in your care. I've definitely offended him, Shi Lian thought. He returned the greeting. Please don't trouble yourself over it. I've heard much about you as well. The words I've heard much about you were certainly not a lie. In the past few days, Shi Lian had skimmed through his scroll and briefly read through the legends of some of the more famous heavenly officials. One of them was General Ming Guang, Pei Ming. So this guy that's just walked up and been all snooty is the ancestor guy of the dude that we just got arrested for crimes. Remember how that guy kind of works for a bigger, more famous guy that has the same name because they're like ancestors and, you know, heavenly politics. So this is the dude whose, call it grandson we arrested, and he's not exactly happy about that. The martial god of the north was skilled in battle, but the most talked about thing among the mortals were stories of his many affairs. That also, the very first arc we went through, I almost forgot. The very first arcs of the story with the ghost bride. The ghost bride that was so heartbroken because the person that was going to marry her never showed up, never came around. The guy was him. So both stories have involved him so far. The first one was about the woman he scorned, and the second one was about his criminal grandson. So he's just 0 for 2. The most talked about thing among the mortals were stories of his many affairs, good and bad, within wanton alleys. The good stories had Pei Ming using copious amounts of gold to help save a pitiful prostitute from the brothels. She fell in love with him and forever remained pure and true to await his return. The bad stories had Pei Ming traveling thousands of miles to spend a one-night stand with a married woman, etc., and so on. On some level, Pei Ming was an inspiring man. After reading through his stories, Shi Lian thought it was quite unbelievable that after so many years, only one Zhuangji that came out of that way of life. In other words, Zhuangji was the ghost bride. He's saying, I can't believe there's not more angry female ghosts haunting this guy. Because Pei Ming was skilled in both battle and in love, many of his rivals and fellows loved cursing him to go die, and even better if he'd die from syphilis. But his life force was tough and he never got infected with anything, even after the many flowers he'd picked. He wouldn't die, and he'd even live longer than most of his fellows, until finally one day he lost a battle. Everyone laughed, thinking, at last it's his end. But then lightning crashed and thunder roared. In that moment of danger, he ascended to the heavens. Those who didn't die by his hand probably all died from outrage. After ascension, Pei Ming didn't change his way of life, and the scale of his tales of promiscuity greatly expanded. From fairies and lady officials to female ghosts and demons. As long as they were beautiful, he would pluck them. Nonetheless, his favorite type was still the charming ladies of the mortal realm. Many indecent love stories had him starring as the main male lead, and if it wasn't for Shilian's method of cultivation that demanded purity of body and mind, he probably would have read a couple of those books just out of curiosity. Thus, in addition to his role as the martial god that ruled the north, the mortal realm also worshipped him as the god of love. Even some officials would turn around and secretly pray to him should they bump into him in the heavens, hoping for some fortune in love. It had to be said that although similar, the title was definitely better than Feng Sheen, I think is how it's said. Feng Xin's unwarranted title, Zhu Yang. Are we saying he had sex with ghosts? Yes. Yes, he did. He had sex with all the people, all the women of all the realms. This guy gets around. All the heavenly officials present in the hall knew in their hearts what "I've heard much about you" meant, and many roared with laughter in their minds. After the pleasantries, Shilian said, "What does General Pei mean by not necessarily settled?" Pei Ming snapped his fingers, and a corpse floating in midair suddenly appeared to be in the middle of the great hall. Strictly speaking, this floating body was an empty shell. It had no soul, completely empty on the inside, but it was covered in blood from head to toe, so it was no different than a corpse. To have something like this appear before an elegant crowd like the heavenly officials was a shock. A moment later, Pei Su was also brought in, but he still looked indifferent and apathetic, even with shackles binding his person, his head bowed low, unspeaking. "General Pei, what's the meaning of this?" Shilian asked. Pei Su knelt down within the great martial hall, and Pei Ming replied, "A few days ago, I went to visit little Pei, and he mentioned something interesting." Pei Ming paced half a circle around Shilian and smiled. "I am quite familiar with little Pei's ability. Even if his clone's powers are reduced and nowhere near the same as his true self, it's still quite competent. It's still capable of fighting evenly with a savage ghost. However, he told me there was a mortal that was able to beat him to the point where he had to relent. Now isn't that interesting?" Pei Ming continued, "And so I questioned him. Apparently at the time there was a red-clothed young man next to your Royal Highness while you were at the Banyu Pass." Hearing the words "red-clothed" made all the officials present shift expressions. Then Pei Ming's following words made them all agitated. He said, "And this young man in the dark was able to eradicate all the menacing Banyu soldiers in a flash. Now, your Royal Highness, might you enlighten us who this red-clothed young man might be? If it wasn't a savage ghost, then it must be a supreme, and one that could kill hundreds of savages in a flash, dressed in all red. Anyone could guess who that young man could be, yet no one wanted to be the first to say the name." Shilian stole a glimpse at the mute Pei Su and replied a little unnaturally, "Really? About that? I really don't remember it well. There was also a caravan that was trapped in the Banyu Pass at the time, and we spent a few days together, so maybe it was someone from the caravan." He's a great liar. Just good job. Pei Ming smiled. "That can't be right, your Royal Highness. According to little Pei, you and that young man were abnormally close. Not like someone you've just met for a few days. How can you not remember?" "No, you're wrong. That was the truth. It really was only just a few days," Shilian said. Shilian thought, actually. Which is, yeah, it's true. He only knew him for a few days. They just clicked very well. Nevertheless, his expression gave nothing away. Just then, from the sidelines, a white-clad cultivator casually waved his whisk and spoke up. "General Pei, you've only heard little Pei's side of the story. Little Pei has committed a crime. He's currently in detention, soon to be exiled. Whether his words are believable needs to be discerned, no? Then we shall see if General Nanyang and General Zuan Zhen can give us a hand," Pei Ming replied. Following his line of sight, Shilian found Feng Xin and Mu Qing someone was very kind enough to comment on some of the names in one of the comments on these videos and share the pronunciation. I'm trying to remember and associate it with the names. Those are the two kind of demigods that went with Shi Lian on this little adventure to help. So, Feng Xin, Mu Qing. Feng Xin, Mu Qing. Following his line of sight, Shi Lian found Feng Xin and Mu Qing standing separately on the southwest and southeast corners of the hall. Feng Xin looked the same as in his memories, standing tall and straight, his eyes determined and brows always slightly furrowed, as if there was always something annoying him, but really he wasn't annoyed at all. Just, I love that guy. Mu Qing, on the other hand, was somewhat different than he remembered. Although his face was still pale as chalk without much blood, his thin lips pursed, his eyes half-lidded, there was a cool air of, "Don't talk to me," surrounding him. He stood with his arms crossed, a finger on his right hand, tapping his left elbow softly, looking like he was either at ease or like he was scheming something. The two were definitely good-looking men, but each had their own flaws. Hearing Pei Ming calling them out, they both looked towards Junwu at the same time. It was only when Junwu had given a slight nod that they stepped forward, reluctantly. This was the first time since Shi Lian's third ascension he'd come face to face with the two of them. He could sense all the eyes on them going wilder. Oh wait, did I mix up who those are? Okay, those are either let me double check and make sure I've not confused which characters those are. Okay, no, I was wrong. Those are the bosses. So those aren't the two demigods that went with him down the... Those are their bosses. So they didn't summon the demigods to come talk. They summoned their bosses, who are the former friends of Shi Lian. So this is the first time he's seeing his former friends from his human life since he ascended. I wondered what that line was. I was like, oh, those are the old friends. So who were what are the... Nanfang is one of them. I don't remember the other kid's name. But they are, I get them confused because they are just like the little servants of the best friend figures. Okay. This was the first time since Shi Lian's third ascension he'd come face to face with the two of them. He could sense all the eyes on them going wilder. Wild was inevitable. The Great Martial Hall was the #1 martial palace of heaven. Those without the title of heavenly official had no entry rights to discuss matters. The first time the Crown Prince of Jianli ascended, Feng Xin and Mu Qing were his deputy generals. At the time, they were only low-ranking officials from the middle court, without even the right to run errands within the Great Martial Hall. And now, not only could the junior officials of back then now stand in the hall, their rankings were higher than their old master. Truly a turn of fate. The three of them looked at each other, eyes flitting all over, stealing glimpses at each other but pretending not to care. Who knew what the other two were thinking? However, Shi Lian could roughly guess why Pei Ming had called them out to help. As suspected, Pei Ming said, "General Nan Yang and Generals Wan Zhen have both fought with Hua Cheng before." Wait, Hua Cheng. I think it's more like Hua Cheng. They have both fought with Hua Cheng before. I'm sure they have the authority to speak regarding the weapon of that person. So, the point of bringing forth the empty shell Azao was to inspect its wounds. Feng Xin and Mu Qing slowly approached the floating body. Shi Lian himself took a few steps forward to take a look, but there was so much blood darkened into black spots it was hard to tell anything. Oh my goodness, Delvin and Daniel, thank you so much. You're both so lovely. And I will take that cup of coffee. Thank you. It was hard to tell anything. The other two, faces austere, took their time in their inspection. Finally, they raised their heads and swept a look at each other, neither of them wanting to speak first. Ling Wen spoke up from next to the throne. "Generals, conclusion?" It was Feng Xin who'd spoken first, his voice dark. "It's him." "The scimitar Yiming," Mu Qing added. Among all the heavenly officials present in the Great Martial Hall, it was probably only Shi Lian who didn't know the significance of those words. The scimitar Yiming was the very same freakish weapon Hua Cheng had used when he singularly challenged the 33 officials and beat them to a pulp, decimating their souls and dignity. Within the great martial hall, the heavenly officials started whispering to each other, the eyes watching Shi Lian unreadable. Pei Ming had attained his objective. Many thanks to the two generals for confirming this fact. If the red-clothed young man who traveled next to your Royal Highness really was that person, then this whole matter is going to be more complicated. The white-clad cultivator from before spoke up again. Excuse me. General Pei, are you saying His Royal Highness the Crown Prince of Jianli colluded with a supreme ghost king specifically to frame General Pei Jr.? Both times when the cultivator spoke, he was on Shi Lian's side, so he had to take a look at who exactly this curious cultivator was. What he saw was a cultivator with clear, bright eyes. He had a whisk between his arms, a long sword carried on his back, and a folding fan tucked into his white jaded belt. His form was graceful and elegant, his expression spirited. He looked familiar, but Shi Lian couldn't recall when he'd met anyone like this. Pei Ming also glanced at him, but it was the look of an irritated elder who didn't want to deal with children. He shook his head and waved dismissively, withdrawing the floating empty shell that was Azao, then turned around and continued his argument. It may not be collusion, except that person is powerful and wicked. Who knows if he might have used deceptive tricks to blind His Royal Highness? Ah yes, deceptive tricks like blatant flirting. His intention was to make Hua Cheng out to be the real perpetrator behind the chaos of Banyu Pass. Shi Lian rebuked, General Pei, even if you don't believe me, you should still believe in the Windmaster. Back in the Sinner's Pit, General Pei Jr. admitted to the crime of luring passerbys to the Banyu Pass with his clone, and the Windmaster heard everything. Pei Ming glanced at the white-clad cultivator again. Shi Lian continued, Besides, since we're both here at the Great Martial Hall, you can very well ask our lord whether I have traces of any spells of deception on my person. Junwu, who sat high above, remained calm and unchanging, meaning Shi Lian was cleared. Shi Lian continued, General Pei, let's keep things clear and separate. Let's not talk about whether the young man I traveled with was Hua Cheng or not. Even if he was confirmed to be Hua Cheng, it has nothing to do with what General Pei Jr. has done. A Supreme Ghost King might have the worst of names on people's lips, but not everything can be blamed on him either. Defending his boyfriend in court? His expression was composed and neutral when the name was uttered, but many in the hall had cold shivers run down their backs. Pei Ming replied, No matter what, I believe this affair needs to be re-examined. It'd be best if the Gyoshi that your Royal Highness has taken away, Banyu, could be brought in for interrogation, too. To interrogate her? For what? Force her to lie? Shi Lian hadn't yet responded when someone else spoke up first. Pei Su looked as if he didn't want to remain in the Great Martial Hall anymore. He said in a low voice, General, let it go. What? Pei Ming was irritated. There isn't any spell of deception. It's all my doing. I've disappointed you, Pei Su confessed. Pei Ming was in the middle of clearing his name, but then he went and said this. Pei Ming turned cold and said darkly, What enchantment concoction did that Banyu Gyoshi feed you? Shut your mouth. However, Pei Su raised his head. Let it go, General. Little Pei isn't afraid to admit to things he's done. Since I've been caught red-handed, I'm not afraid to receive whatever punishment. Pei Ming's face was written full of the shock of, You've always been so mature and competent. Why did you suddenly go nuts today? He was just about to kick Pei Su over the head to wake him up when Junwu spoke. Enough. The moment he spoke, Pei Ming withdrew his leg and bowed. Junwu spoke languidly. The matter of the Banyu Pass is settled. Take little Pei down and exile him in the next few days. After some silence, Pei Ming acknowledged, Yes, my lord. Shi Lian only just breathed in relief when Pei Ming continued, but Nanyang and Zhuanzhen have proven the wounds on the empty shell were indeed inflicted by the scimitar Yiming. I understand, Junwu replied. That is a whole other matter. Pray my lord will look into this matter, Pei Ming said. I will naturally investigate. Mingguang and his fellow deities have no need for concern. After a pause, Junwu continued, You are all dismissed for the day. Jianli, you stay. It It looked like Shi Lian would be personally interrogated. The heavenly officials had nothing left to say and bowed their heads. Yes, my lord. Dismissed, the other heavenly officials exited in groups of 2 or 3s. When Feng Xin passed by, he glanced at Shi Lian, looking as if he had something to say, but stopped himself. Shi Lian smiled at him, and he was startled before hurrying away. Mu Qing, however, walked past without sparing a look, as if Shi Lian never existed. That white-clad cultivator walked over with his whisk in hand and a huge smile, ready to speak. But Pei Ming, who had just lost favor, walked over too, with one hand resting on his hilt and the other rubbing his nose. He said helplessly, "Oh God, I don't know how to say this one. Let me see if I can do a quick Google. I don't think they say this one a lot because he goes by the other title. How do you pronounce the word?" You know, all the wikis would really benefit from having the pronunciation for these names. Let's see what this website says. It says the name is, if it would load. Are you gonna load, website? Website, please load. Queen Juan? Is that what it's saying it? Okay, well the website says it might be Queen Juan. Can people from Twitch and Facebook see your replies? Yeah, in the video, all replies from all locations are here, though it doesn't always show them to me because this program is not perfect. It does look like someone from one of the other sites is giving me a pronunciation. It is, can I read it? Banyue? Banyue. Banyue. Okay, now it's showing up. Oh, thank you, Twitch member Gimv Sen is saying it is Shur Ching Shuan. Shur Ching Shuan. Alright, I will have to continue practicing that one. So that's a character we're meeting, well, we've met before, but we're meeting kind of personally for the first time. So that means his last name is Shuan? Shu Ching Shuan? So, Ching Shuan, for your brother's sake, can you not stir up trouble? The smile disappeared from the face of the white-clad cultivator. General Pei, there's no need to use my brother against me. I'm not afraid of him. You... Pei Ming was enraged, but couldn't do anything. Finally, he pointed at him. You've really done little Pei in now. 200 years of exile? The white-clad cultivator swung his whisk wildly. That's little Pei's own doing. This has nothing to do with me. Looking like he didn't want to continue to quarrel with Pei Ming, the white-clad cultivator stormed off. Shi Lian thought Pei Ming might stick around to taunt him further, but he didn't, and exited the hall willfully. In the large and spacious Great Martial Hall, the only one who remained besides Jun Wu and Shi Lian, who was below the throne, was actually the Crown Prince of Yong'an. I'm gonna say this so wrong. Oh, Xuen. Xuen? Okay, so it's Xuen. Shurqing Xuan. Shurqing Xuan. Shurqing Xuan. I will get it one day. This is another... the Crown Prince of Yong'an, Lang Qianqiu. They've got to stop throwing new names at me. Shi Lian was curious. Qianchu? Qianchu. So Q's or C's? Q's or C's. Okay. Whew. Shi Lian was curious. Why did he stay? When Shi Lian approached, he had his eyes closed, fast asleep while standing. Shi Lian didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and felt quite awkward. Oh my lord, I just got 1 million YouTube comments. Oh geez. I was getting confused, Jeff says. Yeah, I don't know how they look, how the comments look on your end, or how you're seeing them. My feed doesn't come in evenly between Twitch and Facebook and YouTube. Hi, if you're on other platforms. Sorry if I haven't seen your comments. I'm seeing Twitch and YouTube, so maybe it's working now. Okay, so we said it was Chuanchu. Oh, is it over? What's happened? Having just woke up, Lang Chuanchu was still a little dazed and asked in confusion, "Over? Just like that? What did we all discuss? I didn't hear anything." I love this guy. "If you didn't hear anything, then never mind," Shi Lian said. "It wasn't anything important anyway. Come now, time to go back." Oh! Lang Chongchu went to leave, but when he reached the doors, he looked back. Still confused, he regardless gave Shi Lian a big smile. Thanks for waiting for me! Thanks for waking me, I read that wrong. Shi Lian waved at him with a smile. When everyone had finally cleared out, Shi Lian slowly turned around. Jun Wu descended from the throne, hands behind his back. He came before Shi Lian. Crimson rain sought flower, the scimitar eeming. Shi Lian was like a cat picked up by the scruff of his neck, and he involuntarily straightened up. So, what is going on? Jun Wu questioned. Shi Lian looked at him and then suddenly kneeled. Before Shi Lian's knees touched the floor, Jun Wu reached out and held his elbow, preventing him from kneeling. He sighed. Xianli. Shi Lian straightened once more, his head bowed. I'm sorry. Jun Wu watched him. Then do you admit to your wrongdoings? I do, Shi Lian replied. Then why don't you tell me what that wrong is? Jun Wu said. So that's the end of that chapter. Hey, folks that have jumped in. There's actually a note from the author translated here. It says, everyone knows me, right? Other than the main ship, everyone is straight. There are no male characters who will spark love. I see in the comments a lot of people are torn over this. Oh, man. Oh, cool. So she goes on to discuss how in her stories she tends to focus on one romantic pairing and doesn't do really any others, except for in her first novel, which was one of the main exceptions, which I think is really cute because I remember there's a pair in that book that doesn't ever really kind of, I think, get confirmed, but everybody thinks it's basically confirmed. So I guess that's her saying, yes, it is basically confirmed. Cute. But yeah, she's basically saying there will only be one romantic pairing in all her books because that's all she just focuses on. Alright, chapter 34. In the Great Martial Hall, Crown Prince meets Crown Prince. Shi Lian was silent, and Jun Wu shook his head. I didn't think you would know. So basically he's like, I'm sorry I did wrong. And he's like, what did you do wrong? I don't know. I made a friend. The martial Heavenly Emperor inclined his head, gesturing for Shi Lian to follow, and the two of them walked slowly towards the chambers behind the hall. As they walked, Jun Wu, with his hands cradled in front, commented, Xianli is all grown up now. Naturally, Shi Lian didn't dare answer that comment. Jun Wu continued, 800 years ago, when I sent you down, I told you to keep periodic communication with me so you wouldn't be rolling in the mud all by yourself. But the moment you went down, all communication was cut and you had to torment yourself. You've been ascended for some time now, but not once have you reported to the Great Martial Hall. If anyone else was this impertinent, the palace of Ling Wen would have reproached them directly. Pei Ming is the only straight one. Yeah. Yeah, I get, yeah, that seems fair. Though doesn't, there is kind of a romantic pair in this story. Like, she doesn't actually go anywhere. It's like past drama. But, one of the characters has a previous female love interest, but I guess she doesn't count it because it doesn't go anywhere. If your apology was for those few sword stabbings, let it go. You said so yourself. Everything can be forgotten after stabbing. Shi Lian grimaced. How could I forget? Apparently, that's something he said. I wonder if we'll cover that at some point. What's the Martial Hall? So that's, like, all the gods have their own special house, and Martial Hall is a famous, this is our house, our Martial Hall. The Great Martial Hall, whatever they're calling it, is basically, the best house. It's head god's house. So Jun Wu's house is the Great Martial Hall. Then look to the future. There is still much we need you for. Shi Lian rubbed his forehead. Xianli is but a lowly rubbish god without power. There is no need for me. I only ask not to be burdensome. Why depreciate yourself? Didn't you perform splendidly in the last 2 cases? Jun Wu said. Except I may have offended General Pei. Mingguang is fine. I'll watch over him. You don't need to worry. However, Jun Wu turned around. Tell me, what kind of extraordinary character did you engage with when you descended this time? Shilian raised his hand. My lord, I swear I did nothing. Just one day by chance, I encountered an interesting child on the road and we spent some time together. I didn't think much of it. Junwoo nodded. Chance encounter, child. Supreme Ghost King. Xion Li, you do know that if Ming Guang was to question you further and you had confessed this in front of the other officials, what the consequences would be. No one would believe you. Xion Li knows, Shilian replied woefully. So I am grateful for my lord's timely intervention. My lord, you're not actually going to interrogate me, are you? I wouldn't collude with the ghost realm. These are all absurd concerns. Naturally, I know you would not intentionally collude with the ghost realm, Junwoo said. I am grateful for my lord's trust, Jilian replied. However, with things thus, it may no longer be appropriate to send you to investigate an important matter that has surfaced. What is it? Shilian inquired. At this time, the two of them had reached the chamber behind the Great Hall. The Great Hall and the inner chamber were separated by a large mural, the front depicting the golden palace towering through a sea of clouds, radiant and brilliant. The backside of the mural was another depicting mountains and valleys of over 10,000 miles. On the map, there were many tiny pearls like stars. Each of these stars marked a great martial temple in the mortal realm. A pearl embedded on the map meant there was a great martial temple built there. 800 years ago, when Junwoo brought the Jilian who had ascended for the first time to the inner chamber, the pearl stars on the mural weren't as dense. But now the shimmering jewels seemed to be plentifully bestrewn, overwhelming in their radiance. Junwoo stood before the mural and spoke. 7 days ago, many saw with their own eyes a dragon of fire abruptly soaring to the sky from a forest in the east. Shilian's face grew serious hearing those words. Junwoo, with one hand behind his back, used the other and softly knocked on the mural once. The dragon of fire lasted for 2 incense time before burning out. In that time, many witnessed the sight, but not a single person was injured. Do you know what that means? The spell for ascending fire dragon emits intense flames that do no harm. It's a call for help, Shilian replied. That is correct. It was a distress signal, and it came from a heavenly official, Junwoo said. It's no ordinary call for help. It's one of desperation, Shilian added. The ascending fire dragon spell, with its intense flames that would not harm, took an immense amount of power. If the casting official was not careful, they could very well implode and destroy their spiritual core. Therefore, unless they were at the end of their rope, very few would go this route. Now that it had appeared, it meant a heavenly official had fallen into grave danger. Are there any officials whose whereabouts are unknown recently? Shilian asked. The matter with the Banyue Pass. Banyue? The matter with the Banyue Pass was not the only reason all the officials were summoned back to court this time. The main purpose was to use this chance to investigate everyone's whereabouts. Other than those who usually do not show, like the Rain Master and the Earth Master, even those who couldn't make it back reported in. Shilian hummed for a moment, then speculated. Maybe it wasn't any of the officials from this term. Maybe it's one of the retired officials. If that's the case, then I'm afraid our parameters will largely expand. Many of the retired officials have long lost contact with the heavens. It would be difficult to determine who is the one in peril, Junwoo said. So this was probably why Ling Wen and many of the civil officials had dark circles under their eyes, their feet weak. They were busy working on this case and certainly wouldn't have had time to investigate the boy with the human face disease from Mount Yujun. Do the empires have something to do with stones? I don't know about anything in particular that jumps to mind. The stones on the map were representing, like, all the religious temples that had been built to him in the human world. So basically it was like, this is how badass I am, you know. To corner a heavenly official to the point of using such a self-destructive spell, it must be the doing of great evil. Are there any demonic gatherings or lairs in that area? There are, Junwoo replied, and it's very close by. Do you know of Ghost City? Shilian thought about it and replied, I've heard of it. Ghost City was the most prosperous place within the Ghost Realm, situated right at the crossroads of the mortal and ghost realms. This was where all manner of spirits, ghosts, demons, and monsters gathered in swarms to conduct trade and exchanges. Cultivators of certain levels would also go to do business or seek information. Sometimes there would also be heavenly officials in disguise, mixing in for curiosity's sake or other unknown reasons. Of course, there were those who'd enter by mistake and would either be eaten alive or scared to death. Ever since ancient times, although not as ancient as Shilian, there had always been many tales of the ghost city in the mortal realm. Shilian remembered one of the stories had a man traveling at night who saw a bustling market before him with large red lanterns and colorful signs. He entered the market in high spirits but found that everyone around him had a mask, and if they were not hooded, then they were extremely ugly. Very curious. He didn't think deeply about it and bought a bowl of noodles and sat down to eat. But as he ate, the food didn't feel right. When he looked closely, the noodles were actually squirming strands of hair. Shilian brought himself back to the present, and Junwoo continued. After seeing the pillar of fire, I immediately sent officials to investigate the area, but there was no evidence of anything. So it's very possible they've moved to the ghost city. However, the heavenly realm and the ghost realm have always drawn very clear borders. Without enough proof, we cannot intrude on Ghost City, which is why this time I need someone to descend in secret and probe Ghost City. You're right, the next arc is really entertaining. I really like it. We can't alert the enemy and have them move again. Is that why this couldn't be discussed openly at the Great Hall with everyone and let too many know? Shilian said. That is correct, Junru replied. Then my lord, pray give Jianli the command. The first candidate I had in mind was originally you, Junwu said. But for this, it may be inconvenient for you to go. How would it be inconvenient? Shilian asked. First, the east is ruled by Lang Qianshu. If you should go, you must cooperate with him, Junwu said. Shilian responded, that would not be a problem. Please do not worry. Second, Junwu continued, do you know whose territory the ghost city sits in? Taken aback, Shilian said, unsure, is it Huacheng? Junwu nodded slowly, and Shilian's guess was confirmed. But then something else came to mind. The pillar of fire in the eastern forest blazed up 7 days ago. Coincidentally, it was 7 days ago when Huacheng left Pukui Shrine. The timing was impeccable. Was there a connection between the two events? Looks like your relationship with him is not bad, which isn't a problem, Junwu said. The only problem is whether he's involved. If you feel awkward, do not force yourself. If you have other suggestions or anyone you'd nominate, let me know. However, Shilian still said, let me go. I don't think that Crimson Rain Saltflower is a disingenuous individual. Pucci. Okay, Pucci Shrine. Q's or C's, apparently. I've got to get Q's or C's. Okay. Xianli, I know you're very capable and know what you're doing. However, I also know you always think the best of everyone. Oh, bye, Phil. See you later. Yeah, to actually follow the story properly. Yeah, if you've only been catching a episode here and episode there, this is a lot to follow. But it is quite good. You should definitely check it out. Hearing his words, Shilian gave a small smile. Please don't say it like I'm a princess who's never left home. Those words really don't suit me anymore. Junwu still shook his head. I shouldn't comment on the friends you make, but I will still say this. Be careful of Huacheng. Hearing this, Shilian lowered his head in a bow and said nothing. He should have responded with yes, my lord, after all. It was a habit by now. Yet for some reason, he really didn't want to say this yes. Be especially careful of that wicked blade of his, Junwu continued. What do you mean? Shilian asked, curious. The scimitar Yiming. It is a cursed blade, a blade of misfortune. An evil weapon such as that would need a terrifyingly cruel sacrifice and a bloody determination before it could be forged. Do not touch it, and do not let it injure you either. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable, Junwu replied. Shilian couldn't tell where his sudden surge of confidence came from, but inwardly he thought, is it Sun Long? I think it's San Lang probably wouldn't strike him with a blade. I don't think my boyfriend would hurt me. God, I love him. Still, he responded, Xianli understands. Junwu nodded again. I will naturally be at ease with you taking this case. If you don't feel any awkwardness, then even better. But still, going on this mission by yourself may be too much. Are there any other officials you'd like me to appoint to this case? It really doesn't matter, Shi Lian said after some thought, but preferably someone easy to get along with. It'd be good if they're powerful so they can lend me some spiritual power from time to time. Junwu smiled. You struck out both Nan Yang and Zhuan Zhen with the first condition. Truly, no one could say that Feng Xin and Mu Qing of today were personalities that were easy to get along with, and Shi Lian started chuckling too. How goes between the three of you? Have you spoken with them yet? Junwu asked. The Heavenly Emperor himself never entered the communication array, and thus was naturally unaware of the buzzing chit-chat that went on among the officials. We've spoken a few words, Shi Lian replied. It's been so many years, and yet you've only spoken a few words, Junwu inquired. Oh, that's right. I heard when you ascended this time, you destroyed many of your fellow officials' palaces and properties, and one of them was Nanyang. Shi Lian argued back, I paid back the debt, all 8,880,000 merits. And for this, I need to thank my lord for giving me the opportunity to go to Mount Yujun. Thank Nanyang, Junwu replied. I heard Ling Wen say it was he who privately approached her and said there wasn't any need for you to pay back the reconstruction cost. Shi Lian was stunned. I didn't know about this at all. No wonder those 8,880,000 merits were so easily repaid. So much of it was already forgiven. Yet at the time, it was the palace of Nanyang that was the most damaged. They say half the golden roof collapsed. Nanyang made sure Ling Wen would not tell you, so naturally you were unaware. Since he did not want you to know, then it would be best to keep pretending you're ignorant. Shi Lian didn't know how to feel about this. Complicated and bittersweet. His mind was clouded and all over the place. At last he sighed soundlessly and thought, Truly, in this world, the words "don't tell anyone" are empty. Bye, Daniel. Thanks for joining us. Junwu contemplated for a moment, then said, If Nanyang and Zhuazhen will not do, how about the Windmaster? Shi Lian pondered the option. Lord Windmaster is very good, but I don't know if she would want to go on this mission with me. The Windmaster is powerful, Junwu said, a lively person who enjoys making friends and thus matches your first condition of easy to get along with. After the business with Ban Yue, the Windmaster has a good impression of you as well. I think the two of you will be all right. If you do not have any other questions, descend with the Windmaster and investigate the Ghost City. Also, yes, Junwu said languidly. Work hard, but do not force yourself. Shi Lian was startled by those words and smiled. What is my lord saying? I'm not forcing myself. Junwu patted Shi Lian's shoulders. Return to the palace of Jianli to rest for now. I'll send word to summon the Windmaster. Shi Lian blinked. I don't have enough merits, so no palace has been erected. The palace of Jianli from the past has long since been torn down, so what palace? I've granted you a new one, Junwu said. You cannot possibly always squeeze into that broken-down little shrine. Shi Lian left the great martial hall and was led to the palace of Jianli by a junior official from Junwu's palace. This palace of Jianli was practically exactly the same as the one he'd had in the past. Red glass walls, sumptuous and elegant. He stood outside the palace gates for a long time, but not a shred of desire to enter came to him. The scrap immortal was still best suited for a scrapped shrine after all. A proud and glamorous heavenly palace like this wasn't a place he could stay. He loitered outside the entrance and waited for the Lord Windmaster to come find him, but after a while the one who appeared wasn't the lady cultivator in white, but another white-clad cultivator. The cultivator had a glowing spiritual aura in abundance surrounding him. It was the one from the meeting at the Great Martial Hall who was randomly fighting Pei Ming. I've already forgotten how that... Xing Xuan? Is that how they said to say it? I'll have to double check for next time. He waved his whisk, a smile hanging off his lips. Greetings, Your Highness. Shi Lian smiled back. Greetings, fellow cultivator. Truthfully, he really wanted to ask who he was, but thought it would be rude to do so. He was about to sneak a peek at his scroll to see which heavenly official was named, Xing Xuan? I wish I need to write all these down and just put a post-it note right here. That's what I should do. When the person in question walked up to him and exclaimed, Let's go check out down below. Shi Lian was taken aback. My friend, I'm waiting for someone. Hearing this, the cultivator placed his whisk into the back collar of his outer robe and turned around in wonder. Who are you waiting for? I'm waiting for the Windmaster, Shilian said. The white-clad cultivator looked more confused. I'm right here. Shilian's brows jumped. You're the Windmaster? The other flashed open his fan and started fanning. I am the Windmaster. Was there ever any doubt? Did you not know who I was? Have you never heard my name, the Windmaster Qingxuan? Ooh, if you have a pronunciation guide Google Doc link, please do share that. I would love to mark that down. Whew. His tone was irrefutable and absolute, strong and confident, as if Shilian not knowing his name was an impossible thing. The folding fan had the word for wind, fang, written slanted on the front. The backside had 3 inclining lines drawn, the exact same fan the lady cultivator in white had in her hand. Awesome, thank you so much. I'm gonna click that and save it. Come on, let me save it. So what has happened is, which they may be about to explain, but I want to give a little more detail. The female cultivator we met in the previous chapter is now a male cultivator, and that's because gods can change form whenever they want. You know, they don't really, you know, they don't have to stick to a specific body. This character in particular likes to change between male and female, and for that reason, a lot of fans have interpreted the character as like genderqueer. I don't think that is not like a canonical thing. The pronouns change based on what body that the character is in at the time, but I really like the idea of this character as like genderqueer, trans in some way, which is fun. All right. Shilian suddenly recalled Fu Yao mentioned that some upper court heavenly officials, under special circumstances, had the ability to transform their appearance, while at Ban Yue, Nan Fang had also uttered an incomplete sentence. The Windmaster had always been what? A man? After getting dragged for a few steps, Shilian still couldn't fully process the information. What does cultivate mean? Okay, so this is a term that comes from this genre of literature. Cultivate basically is a way of training your spiritual power. Cultivators are people that like fight with spiritual power. To cultivate is to cultivate your spirit, your energy, your power. You imagine like the Dragon Ball Z characters in the desert punching rocks. Like they're cultivating, they're strengthening up as warriors, but with spiritual magic too. Lord Windmaster, why did you disguise yourself as a woman last time? What? Was I not beautiful? The Windmaster asked. Yes, but Shilian was still confused. If I was beautiful, there's no but, as long as I looked good. The Windmaster smiled brightly. Of course it's because I'd looked good that I was in disguise. I love the Windmaster. I love the Windmaster so much. Having said that, he looked to have suddenly come up with an idea and closed his fan. He gave Shilian a once-over with a calculated look, then spoke after a moment. Speaking of which, don't we need to be undercover for this mission to the Ghost City? Shilian. Huh? That's the end of that chapter, and we've finally really been introduced to one of the best characters in this book, one of my favorites. I really love Windmaster. Thanks for listening. Sorry, I think we missed last week. It's been a little weird lately, but hopefully the schedule will get better soon, and the setup as well. I know the mic didn't sound perfect, but hopefully I will replace that soon. Thanks for listening. If you like what I do and you want to support it, links in the description. If you like this genre and you want to hear another work from this author, on Thursday I'm going to start reading Scum Villain Self-Saving System, which is the first book this author ever wrote. And after we read it, I'm going to watch the show with everybody on Discord. We watched the first 2 episodes last week. They were so good and so fun. The show's called Scumbag System. It's really cute and really lovely. And apparently the people that made it had like a budget of $12, and they were so passionate and worked so hard. The scriptwriter really tried to make something really unique and true to the book. And I think they've done a good job with what they had. I'm excited to watch more. So we will be starting on Thursdays reading that book, which is also really fun. Not as long or quite as big on world building as this one, but it's really funny and entertaining. My Silent Hill 3 book is open for pre-orders. You still can get some discounts. Check out the site in the description. Follow me on social media, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, blah, 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 all that. Links in the description. I will see you guys next time. Thanks to all of our members and folks who donated today. Delvin, Daniel, Jeff, Pablo. Thank you all so much for keeping the channel alive and supporting it and helping me to do what I do. I love you all, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.